just want to change topics a little bit.
Yeah.
Just it's still in the finance space, but we talked a little bit about this a while ago, which was property, right? And you're not a property buyer. You don't believe in it, or
there's a lot of shades of grey, like everything, right? There's black and white, and there's a lot of shades of grey.
Most Australians have made their money from property.
I think some have.
Right.
A lot. Okay. So you got to think about, if we think back a while, okay, because I've talked to like 90-year-olds about this in the past, right? And property back in the day, like if we're talking 60, 70 years ago, you could basically purchase a property with like 2 years worth of your salary pretty much. You know, that was like the median cost of a house, basically. Yeah. So 1 to 2 years of your gross salary.
Yeah.
So like I was talking to a bus driver. Yeah, he was a bus driver back in the day and he's 90 odd now.
Yeah.
But he was saying in Sydney, he could purchase like a property for 1.5 times what his gross salary was as a bus driver.
Right.
And he could buy a car with like 1 month's worth of salary pretty much.
Right.
So, you know, like that's why so many people have made a lot of money from property, because back in the day, it was reasonably priced relative to the earnings that people were making.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's been some pretty explosive growth when you think about, you know, relative prices to property today versus what they were back then.
Yeah.
Pretty explosive growth. And as those properties are passed down to, you know, new generations and stuff like that, yes, there's been some money made. But I don't think it's the way to do it today.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason is because the way people typically go about purchasing a home or purchasing a property, most people are purchasing a property for a home, right? Like, do you want to talk about investment or you want to talk about home? Because I can talk about both.
Let's just stay on a home. So like,
home.
should you rent or should you buy?
Again, it's you're asking me like a black and white question when there's many shades of grey in between, okay?
Okay.
I think that I'll describe the way that you shouldn't do it, all right? And it's the way that most people go about doing it. What they do is they go find a property that they're able to purchase. So something that is of a price point that they can actually afford, okay? Now, typically what you're ending up doing here, and you have to think as well, like people also want something that's nice. So they want something that's nice.
Yeah, because it's a personal. When you're living in it, it's personal. So
exactly.
Yeah,
it's a personal
So we're not looking at it as an investment.
It's an emotional decision. It's not an investment decision.
Correct.
It's an emotional decision.
Correct.
Okay. And this is the difference. It's an emotional decision of what they're purchasing. It has to be nice, which means typically it has to be pretty new. It has to be like white marble, blah, 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 whatever. It has to be something you can afford.
Yeah.
So what people end up doing is they go and purchase something that like is in a large development area. You know, on the Gold Coast, we're talking Pimpama, Upper Coomera, that type of area where a lot of development is happening and you can purchase a nice place that's relatively new for a pretty good price. You're talking you know, 400 or 500 grand or something like that for the same quality of home that you would purchase for like almost $1 million anywhere in a more kind of already well-established area.
Yeah.
So this is what people do, okay?
Yeah.
And you have to think when you're buying property, if you want to buy it as an investment, you have to buy gold. You have to buy Bitcoin, something that you can't replicate.
Yeah.
Okay? Something that's very unique in an area where there isn't really much more development going on. Okay?
Yeah.
So when you buy these things in these like large development areas, the only people that make the money is the developer.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a financial advisor, I spoke to people that have bought properties in these areas and 10 years later, it's worth like 30 grand less than what they bought it for kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay? So because the reason why is because you purchase your house today, right? And then over the next 5 years or whatever, they're still developing this area. They're building new houses, pretty much exactly the same as what you've got because they've got maybe 5 different models of house that they're building as a developer. And they're building out this whole area.
Yeah.
So in, say, 3 or 4 years, you want to go and get your house refinanced, you want to sell it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
There's a house next door that's almost identical to yours, but has been built 3 years later, sorry. So it makes it newer, exactly the same. So why would someone pay, you know, $500,000 for your house, which is older than the one next door that they can get for the exact same price and it's brand new?
Well, look, that's if you're buying in a cookie cutter area, like.
But this is what I'm saying. This
no
is like the
property
typical,
is the same size, the same look. Like
this is what I'm saying. This is the typical way people do it, right? And they get a 30-year mortgage on this thing, and typically they can only put into it like 10% as a deposit.
So when do you think you would buy property? When would you?
When would I buy a property?
Yeah.
Well, when it's like the property, something unique, and it's like the property I'm going to be in for a very long time.
So the dream home.
Yes, because people move on average every 8 years, okay? And when you've got a 30-year mortgage and you're paying this off over 30 years, most people just pay the minimum onto their mortgage, all right? So what happens is if you ever look at an amortization curve, so amortization is basically how much you're paying onto principal and interest over a 30-year loan or over any period of loan, you can produce an amortization curve and it tells you how much you're paying on principal and how much you're paying on interest. Over the first 18 and a half years, you're paying more onto interest than you are on principal on a 30-year mortgage. And in the first 10 years, every payment, less than 30% of that is actually going to the principal.
Wow.
70% is going to the interest side of things.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, so if people are moving every 8 years, out of every time they throw money into this repayment, only 20 to 30% of that every payment is actually going into the principal side of things.
Wow.
Most of it is going into the interest. And if people are moving every 8 years, they go and they buy a new place and they've got a little bit extra out of this property of the small amount of principal that they've paid, right? When they sell it, they pay all the costs to sell. They pay like the agent's fees, the lawyer's fees, all this kind of thing to sell it.
Yeah.
And then they have just basically like an extra maybe $10,000 or $20,000. And that's over the last 8 years, the little bit of principal extra that they've paid, right?
So when you were a financial advisor though, did you advise people against purchasing?
No, because you got to think when you're.
So can you trust a financial advisor in what they're advising you?
You can trust some, you can't trust all of them.
But why would they not tell me what's best for me?
Well, that's the thing. There's lots of shades of grey, right? Most people, when they see a financial advisor, they're not purchasing their first home. They're already maybe 2 or 3 homes in and they're like 40 or 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're already a long way on their journey. And basically they're kind of going, oh shit, I need to retire soon, right? So they're already into the mortgage, all that kind of thing. So your main job then is to be like, okay, well, how do we actually repay this faster?
Yeah.
Right? So in a lot of cases, you're not really giving that advice.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.